What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another winning edition of SSPN Postgame. Was not the prettiest win of all time, Ethan. Dare I say it was definitely the ugliest win of the season so far. But Ethan, when you look back at the circumstances of this game, man, if we had a situation in the third quarter over the past three seasons where we went down by 10 going into the fourth, there's just no way that the Spurs would have came back. Obviously, Luke Cornett back tonight, our first post game with De'Aaron Fox, his second game back on the team. So had some firepower in the rotation. Also saw a little bit of Jeremy Sohan and Kelly Olynyk as well. So want to throw that in there too. But still, man, honestly, my biggest takeaway, as much as there's a lot of negative that we're going to get into in the first three quarters, the fact that they overcame all that, won the fourth quarter 32-19, and got a win. But man, I'm saying all that, and I don't want to take away from a lot of the things that the team did, but I think the conversation starts and ends with Victor Wembanyama tonight and him waving off the entire team. Let me just go get this three. Let me put the team on my back. Let me go ahead and put up 38, 12, 5, 1, and 5 tonight. And just take the game over in Chicago, man. What were your overall thoughts on this one? And then, of course, what Wemby did in the fourth.
Yeah, really an up and down game. I think you summarized it really well, Jude. What it felt like to me, looking back on it, the last 5 years as a Spurs fan, I feel like we flipped the script. Like we would have been Chicago in this game, where we kind of come back in that second and third quarter, go on a run, and then somehow find a way to just give it up to what most people call a better team. And I think most people would say San Antonio, especially with the injuries that Chicago had tonight, were a better team than the Bulls. So obviously, it wasn't super enjoyable in those middle two quarters for those of us that wanted us to win by like 20 or 30, especially with Josh Giddey out. But still, there were positives despite those middle two quarters. There were positives in that first quarter and especially in that fourth quarter. And I think you're right. Having Victor, that's the biggest difference. Obviously, I don't want to be Captain Obvious here, but having a go-to all-star level, MVP level caliber guy on the team really changes things in terms of what we're able to do to close games.
Yeah, and that was the first comment from our guy Tanner Robertson. He says it's nice to have a top 5 player in the world. And
Hmm.
man, dude, it was kind of one of those things you could almost feel it when Wemby was dribbling the ball up the floor when it was 113-113 and he had Vooch on him and he had just hit the three before. You didn't know if it was necessarily going to be a three, but you knew he was going to take the shot on that possession. But with the way that this game had been going, and I believe this is the most threes that he's taken all season in a game, went 6 for 9 tonight, 66% from three. And that was huge too, Ethan. This is another thing that we haven't even jumped into. Look at Chicago, dude. 16 for 38 from three, 42%. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who hit multiple threes. And that's
Hmm.
something for them this season that's kind of came out of nowhere, even when they have Giddey on the floor. And his 3-point shooting's been pretty solid as well. I was doing some scouting earlier today, just looking at their games that they've played so far this season. But again, man, to get back to Wemby, him shooting 6 for 9 on threes was even more important tonight
Hmm.
because Chicago was shooting so well from deep.
Yeah, and defensively, when you think about just overall defensively, like Trey Jones could not get 27 and 7. So obviously some things for the squad to look at on game film because he was absolutely obliterating us tonight, which is strange.
Dude, yeah, I saw a tweet earlier today, and it was like, for all the Spurs fans that called Trey Jones trash, I wonder how this feels right now.
Yeah.
And not to say that they weren't necessarily justified in certain situations. If you've been watching SSPN, you know that we always thought Trey Jones was pretty solid and never thought he was
Hmm.
horrible, but still, he definitely had some motivation tonight. That is for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we both, I think, would be classified as Trey Jones supporters and defenders, and we liked him. But when the opportunity to trade Trey Jones for De'Aaron Fox
Yeah.
comes up, like no question, you gotta make that deal. But tonight, Trey Jones was looking a lot like Fox.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. But yeah, to get back to Victor, and that last possession that we saw with him dribbling up the floor, man. It was just one of those moments where it felt like you could feel that the takeover was coming,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
But aside from Victor, what were the things that kind of stood out to you in this game? besides this, just the jumbledness whenever it comes to the team overall, kind of early in the
Mhm.
game.
I thought Luke Cornett was extremely important. I think he only had 4 points going into the 4th quarter. I think he had or no, I'm exaggerating, but he had a lot of his points in that 4th quarter, and it was his pick and roll play with Stephon Castle that was, I mean, lob after lob after lob. So I thought they were extremely important. And really, he played solid all game. It was just getting open. I felt like Steph. I mean, he had 11 assists, but in those middle 2 quarters, it felt like we were playing like conservative is the wrong word, but we were pressing but not getting easy looks. And then defensively, we
Yeah.
weren't closing out on shooters and not playing as aggressively in passing lanes, which limited our transition offense as well, which I think
Yep.
really hurt us. But we were able to turn it on in that 4th quarter. I think a lot of it is due to Steph and obviously Victor, but Luke Cornett deserves some praise. And the energy from KJ, it can't be um, it can't be overstated. 7 rebounds. How many of those were offensive boards?
Right.
4 offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities from KJ. And when you really look back on it and you watch the tape, I bet a lot of those momentous runs that Chicago went on were just self-inflicted mistakes, silly passes, poor turnovers. I mean, look at De'Aaron had 6 turnovers by himself.
Oh
That's
man.
not something that is common occurrence for him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I did really feel like there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds in this one. Honestly, just to talk about the game overall, and then we'll get a little bit back more into individual evaluations. I feel like after that first start, we started out, we looked so in rhythm. You had ball movement. We looked
Hmm.
connected offensively and defensively. I think it was 16-4, something like that is what the game started with.
Hmm.
And essentially after those first subs, dude, it seemed like to me that I feel like kind of felt like, okay, we're going to coast. Giddy's not playing.
Yep.
This is how the game's going to go. We took our foot off the gas, and then obviously, Chicago is still they were a 6-2 team or 6-3 team coming into this. And if you look up there, Ethan, they were 5-0 at home coming
Hmm.
into this game as well. So this was their first loss uh, at home, and I can't believe this.
I
I'm
think you're
blank.
talking about I think you were getting to their bench play, and they were about to go on a run.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
Hmm.
yeah. So after we had our first subs, you know what I mean? It felt like we just kind of took our foot off the gas. And this is still a good team. That's what I was basically saying
Right.
with the 6-3 and the 5-0 at home thing. So as much as I feel like if we played with that same intensity and connectedness that we did in that opening stands, that the Spurs had the ability to win the game that way the whole time, when they
Hmm.
let their foot off the gas, Chicago's still a good enough team to where they're going to give you a fight. And I really feel like that was just the rest of the game, dude. I never really felt like I felt like it was a lot of individual play until the 4th quarter. But
Yep.
even in the 4th quarter, obviously that was a lot of Wemby ISO. And like you said, Luke Cornett got 4 of those points straight at the foul line late in the game as well, on top of a couple lobs from Steph. So it really was just kind of mainly those 2 guys in the 4th quarter outside of a couple other buckets. But
Hmm.
again, I felt like this was the most disconnected that the Spurs have been in a game that I've seen. And I felt like the beginning of the game looked so good,
Yeah.
and I think you saw, not to go all over the place here, but I think you kind of saw flashes of that in the Saturday game as well, when they went up really big against the Pelicans and then kind of let them back in late in the 4th quarter. Um, I kind of feel like, again, that's kind of what the Spurs are battling now with De'Aaron in. It's almost like,
Mm.
if we have those stretches where we feel so dominant, we just feel like that's going to just continue to happen, regardless of the intensity level. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's just my best, diagnosis of it, watching it through a TV screen. But I definitely think that our intensity lessened, throughout the second and third quarter. But we were still able to play decently enough offensively to stay in the game.
Yeah, I don't wanna create false narratives, like, I don't know this for a fact, but watching the game, it also feels like when we get up by a certain amount or we're playing well, then it becomes we kinda regress back to, individuals trying to get maybe their baskets when we need to continue playing, with a certain level of strategy and, sorry, Winky's all over my
You're good.
keyboard right now. A certain level of strategy, like we play through Victor, right? I think we started off that way. We were playing through Victor, even if it wasn't in the post, he
Yes.
touches. And then sometimes there are stretches where he doesn't necessarily get the rock at all, and he's standing in the corner. And could that be coaching? Maybe, but it also feels like we're playing so free form that we sometimes forget that he's the bread and butter, and it takes us going down to realize, oh, maybe we should get the ball to the best player in the arena right now, the 7'5" monster, and just let him get easy baskets. And I think you saw that again, like not even the big
Yeah.
threes, but I think he took like 3 or 4 mid-range jump shots, fadeaway jump shots that were, all cash money. It's like, oh yeah, I forget he's 7'5" and can actually just shoot over Nikola Vucevic. Like he's 6'11", but it doesn't matter. Shooting over a chair for Victor. And I think we're kind of getting off of that track at points in the game for long stretches, and that's what's allowing these teams to make minor comebacks against us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's some great analysis there too. But as you're talking, Ethan, I'm looking over some other things. I'm seeing some things in the comments. Here's another thing that just like is totally kind of forgotten a little bit here tonight. As much as he did still have 21 minutes, but Devin Vassell did go out with
He
a
did.
migraine for most of the second half. So only took 4 shots from him tonight. I think there could have been some, at least the attention that he draws offensively. We've talked about that. He's just a key rotation player for us. So him not playing the full game, that has some sort of negative impact. Only 4 shots for Harrison Barnes tonight and just 2 threes. He's been going off for us lately. I'm not saying he needs to take like 6 threes a game necessarily, but I would like to see like at least, 3 to 4, or maybe 4 to 5 is the way to put it. With the way that he's been shooting lately. But Tanner brought this up in the comments as well. Let me find it here. Julian Champagny went 0 for 5 tonight as well on 22 minutes. And I'm not bringing that up to just be like, oh, Julian's terrible. I'm just
Mhm.
saying that tonight, again, to go back to that 3-point shooting with Chicago, our perimeter shooting outside of Wemby, if we look at it, dude, we got 1 for 2, 1 for 6 from De'Aaron Fox, 0 for 1 from Devin, 1 for 3 from Steph Castle, 1 for 3 from Lindy Waters as well. Like we said, 0 for 5 from Julian, 0 for 1 from Keldon, 0 for 1 from Jeremy, and 0 for 2 from Carter as well. So the only person who shot well from 3 on the Spurs tonight was Victor Wembanyama. And we know that whether it's Victor or Keldon or De'Aaron or Steph, that rim pressure, if we're not able to execute kicking out to shooters with that rim pressure, that can allow defenses to kind of pigeonhole us to an extent, which is, I'm kind of
Hmm.
realizing this after looking at the box score and watching the game, putting it all together here as we talk, Ethan. That's kind of why we had to go so ISO with Wemby.
No, that's a really, really good point, and that's just like the simplest way to sum up this game. They were really hot from 3, and we were not hot from 3, but we were the better team with the best player, so we were still able to get the win. And that's what it comes down to. I kind of like what Dylan Harper too, probably not the real Dylan Harper, is saying in the comments. Need a Doug McDermott, and that's not a bad point. Like I don't think we have a guy just like sitting at the 12th, 13th spot on the roster, Jude, whose only job is to come in and just be a flamethrower, right? Like ideally that's Julian Champagny, ideally that's Devin Vassell, but if they're not hitting their shots, like we need just one guy that's literally all he does, like a Kevin Herter almost for Chicago. Like he was absolutely key for them to be in this game. Like he was drilling threes, fadeaway threes. We need a Marco Bellinelli-esque guy on this roster, Jude.
Yeah, and some nights Julian's that for us.
For
You know
sure.
what I mean? And maybe Devin would have been that tonight if he would have played the whole game. We've seen him be that in spurts this season. But regardless, I think when you look at De'Aaron Fox, and really, he's this one of the oldest players on the team. You know, he's somebody that you need maybe 2 more threes from
Yeah.
tonight. He's really the guy that needs to shoot better from 3 in this one. Champagny as well. But again, I'm not even trying to make excuses for Julian here, but he really is Danny 2.0, bro. Like
Hmm.
he's 0 for 5 or he's 5 for 5 and
Yep.
there's no in between.
Pretty
So
much.
that's not as surprising from Julian there. And again, 3 steals from Julian tonight, so found a way to make an
Hmm.
impact defensively. Not saying everything was perfect because I do think the rotations were off. And with the perimeter shooting, whenever it comes to Chicago, as much as they've been better at that this year, Ethan, one thing that we have kind of like pointed out throughout the year, and the other game that this is in is the Phoenix game when they shot 60% from 3. So again, it's like the instances when this is happening is when teams just go insane from the 3-point line. But still, just that final rotation on defense with that last perimeter shooter, I do think that is one thing on defense that's continued to kind of show up for the Spurs,
Mm.
to be nitpicky. Obviously, the interior defense is a lot better. I still say our rotations and our connectedness overall on the season outside of this game is a lot better. But I think that is something that the Spurs can improve on just scheme wise, and on court execution wise.
Yeah, dude, Trey Jones looked like Steve Nash, like prime Steve Nash, the way he was dribbling just under the basket and in
Uh
circles.
huh.
And I think honestly, our
Like
perimeter
Tony
defenders,
too.
yeah, they got caught ball watching. Like we were so glued onto the ball that their perimeter players were able to just rotate constantly. And as you're saying, we lost track of them, screwed up our rotations, and that last guy was always late. So give credit to Trey Jones. I think he really deserves like 95% of the reason those guys were so open.
Yeah, dude, he totally balled tonight on a multitude of levels. 6 boards for him, 2 steals. Obviously we didn't want Trey to play well tonight, Ethan, but shout out to Trey, bro. Like, glad to see that you've kind of. I feel like what Trey Jones is now on the Bulls. I feel like his ceiling has been elevated since he left San Antonio.
Oh, for sure. He has to play this way in Chicago and San Antonio. He didn't necessarily need to. So I'm happy for him.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Javid Cole says, obviously we still have a lot of growing to do, but it's good to be winning these games where in the past these criticisms would be accompanied with
It's
losses.
very true.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. To kind of round out these individual evaluations here, Ethan, like you said, you mentioned that with Keldon. You know what's crazy? Watching this game, I felt like this was Keldon's worst game of the year. And then I go to the box score and it's still really solid. And I didn't think he played bad, but just in comparison to what I've saw earlier in the year, I honestly thought the field goal percentage was going to be more inefficient, but I kind of thought that they might count some of the putback opportunities, and I think they didn't count a lot of those, or maybe he didn't get his hand all
Mhm.
the way on the ball, so it wasn't counted as a shot. But regardless, the rebounds, like you mentioned earlier, dude, we saw this on Friday and Saturday night as well. Keldon Johnson has been going off on the offensive boards. I
Mm.
mean, he gets us so many second chances. You mentioned it earlier with the 3 tonight. But yeah, dude, I just want to mention that because it's not just in this game, but these games that we missed last week as well. Keldon on the offensive boards has been integral. But aside from Keldon, because you kind of already touched on that, what were your thoughts on Jeremy Sohan just getting 10 minutes tonight?
Yeah, to be completely honest, Jude, in the second half, I thought to myself, Jeremy hasn't played in a while, and that's because he didn't really do much of
Yeah.
anything when he was in the game. So I respect the coach's decision. Like we're trying to compete, we're trying to win, and he wasn't contributing effectively really on either side of the ball. So we subbed him out. I mean, these games are bound to happen, but I'm glad. I think it speaks more to the place that we are as a team than I think it does Jeremy Sohan as a player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in like a different matchup, you might see Jeremy play more tonight
Hmm.
against a different team, kind of like we did in the past 2 games. But the other thing I want to bring up, and we saw this in the comments either, and this was another big thing for me tonight. And this is the first time that I've really had. And before I say this, let me say I still really like Mitch Johnson as the head coach. Mitch Johnson knows more than me about basketball than I will ever know in my entire life. But I saw Million Gnu's comment earlier. He says, bro, the coaching was so off this game.
Mm.
And there was somebody else. Let me find it. It was Mark Obed goes on, one of our OGs. He says, when Mitch experimented with lineups, that's when the Bulls got back in and took the lead. And that was when we went out. We threw Kelly Olynyk out there, I believe. I don't know if that was next to Sohan. No, we threw
With Victor.
yeah, we threw him out there at the 4 with Victor, but we threw Luke out there for like 2-3 minutes. And I'm thinking, okay, we're taking him out because he's on a minutes restriction. But then we threw out Jeremy at center to match up with Jalen Smith, which I'm not that mad at because Jalen Smith's 6'9". So you know what I mean? It's actually like a
Played
matchup
really well too.
that Jeremy can, match up with. But even then, I'm seeing him get boxed out. I mean, I'm getting shades of the Zach Edey comment that I always make from last season. And I'm just like, why aren't we playing him next to Luke Cornett? And, I didn't hate the lineup that was in at that point because it was like there were still some starters. Like it was Steph, Dev, Julian, Keldon, and Luke. So you know what I mean? I was like, okay, like I like that lineup still. But I was just kind of, again, one of the things that we talked about this season, Ethan, like in the episode previewing the year with Chris from Spurs Spotlight, was we're excited to see Jeremy Sohan play the 4. Have we
Hmm.
seen that yet this year?
Very little.
Yeah.
Next to Bismack.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Like, and it's like that doesn't, that's not what we were looking for. We wanted to see him next to Cornette or Wemby.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I will just say, in fairness to Mitch, this is the first time that he's had both De'Aaron and Luke and what's his name, Kelly Olynyk, all on an active
That's true.
roster for one game, right? So I'm sure, I don't think it's a surprise, and I think he even openly said it in like preseason interviews and post games is like he's going to experiment with lineups. So I think this is just something that we'll have to accept for the foreseeable future until we find something that he's really honed in on and decided that that's going to be our primary rotation. I'm sure we'll just have to deal with what feels like weird lineups at times that don't work, unfortunately. And ideally, I think you and I would just like to play Jeremy at the backup 4 and Kelly again, not Kelly, Luke Cornett at the backup 5 and just call it a day. But I'm sure like he's got a lot more in his head
Right.
to try and work out long term.
And matchup stuff, like you were saying too.
Yeah.
But the one other thing that I will say is you saw that experimenting stop once
Mhm.
Chicago went on their
Absolutely.
run. You know what I mean? So and I
Yep.
totally get where he was coming from because again, like I said earlier, it felt like we were gonna blow them out after the first time out, especially with
Exactly.
Josh Giddey out. But again,
The more you know.
there's still a 6-3 team who is undefeated at home, and I'm just like, is that when we need to be experimenting? I mean, I do. With that being said, you're still 100% right. This is the first opportunity that he's even had to run these lineups because Kelly Olynyk didn't play in preseason. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like that was also kind of the reason that Chicago got back into it tonight a little bit too. But I'm not an
Mhm.
NBA head coach, and I don't know everything that's on his plate. And like you said,
For sure.
there's a lot more stuff in his head that he's thinking of that's probably smarter than the stuff we're thinking of right now. So
Learning moment for everybody, I think. I mean, ideally, his team doesn't give up a lead like that, and that's probably what he's gonna flip it as. But I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he won't do that. That early in the game with only a 10-point
yeah,
lead this
and
time.
just to kind of wrap up this point, notice 4 minutes from Carter Bryant, 4 minutes from Kelly Olynyk, and 7 minutes from Lindy. That didn't last too long.
No, not at all.
Oh man, but I'll be honest again, and I know I said I was going to wrap it up with that. I was intrigued when I saw the Kelly Olynyk Victor lineup. I was like, oh, how's this going to look?
Oh, me
So
too.
I can't, I can criticize it, but also in the moment, I was like, I like that. So there you.
Hey, two really good passes from Kelly, man. Don't give Kelly credit. 2 assists in 4
Oh
minutes.
my goodness, yeah. Well, here, let's go ahead and look at some of these other comments that we got coming in. TG Canoes and Kayak says, I can't tell if Mitch sucks or if he is experimenting with crazy lineups and intentionally putting players out of position. Like you said, definitely experimenting with the guys that he just got.
Mhm.
Peter Antosha says, Sohan don't play because the Spurs three-pointer is not dropping in. Sohan will clog the paint. Honestly, tonight, with the lack of three-point shooting, I get where you're coming from, and that ties into the matchup thing.
Hmm.
Let me see what else we got here. Yop Yop says, this summer I read a lot of Spurs fans disappointed by Cornette's very big contract. This will be our X factor this season. Couldn't agree more.
Very true.
Sean E in the comments, he says, go Spurs. He says, Jude was so right about Luke Cornett. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I mean,
Darn
dude,
right.
I wish my thoughts about this game going into it would have been right though tonight, leading to a dominant victory, but that unfortunately didn't happen. Oh man.
Hmm.
Tanner says, I think Jeremy missing the first portion of the season hurt more than most guys because of how unique he is.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out where he fits
I
in.
think that's a really good point. Neo DZ 015 HDZ says KJ is the heart of this team. I mean, he's definitely a big emotional part of it for sure. I
Mhm.
think this is the last thing I'll say on Keldon for this episode. I think the way that he's played this year honestly matches his personality the most.
Say that one
Like,
more time. Sorry, I was
you're good.
reading a comment.
The way that KJ has played this year, like just, hustling for
Mhm.
offensive boards and stuff, like it matches his personality the most. Like out of all the
Without a
seasons in
doubt.
his career, like the yelling and just being a team guy and sacrificing no matter what, he's embodying that on the floor this year for sure.
You know what he is? He's Russell Westbrook if Russell Westbrook didn't take 12 ill-advised threes a game. That's pretty
It
much
was
what
his
he is.
favorite player, right?
Mhm. Exactly.
one of our OGs in here. I said AI Cheetle last time, which was totally wrong. So
Mm,
AITCHTL says, I think the
mm,
scary thing is that we still haven't seen the best of this team and we're still getting past top teams in the standings. It's early in the year,
very
but I
true.
do think this Chicago team's better than a lot of people thought. And we were able to pull out the win tonight. Again, got to acknowledge no Josh Giddey, but we'll throw out no Dylan Harper too.
Very true. Dylan Harper solves a lot of our problems.
He definitely will help with the bench scoring. And I mean, I just go back to, I mean, he bailed us out in some of the games earlier in the season. Now,
He did.
granted, that was against teams like the Nets and the Raptors, who aren't as good as some of the teams that we've played over the last week. But I do think he would definitely give us some juice offensively off the bench when we're in a rut.
Absolutely.
All right, this will be the last comment here. Million Gnu says, I refuse to believe professional basketball players could forget their 7'5" superstar. It's all coaching. Um,
I do believe it. I do. I do because they're all such confident,
their whole life.
no
Yeah,
disrespect, egomaniacs. Like this is what they do. So I mean, when they all think that they're the best player on the court at all times,
well,
unfortunately,
regardless, we got him the ball in the fourth tonight, right?
we did. And he explained, I don't know if we gave it enough emphasis. Him waving off
Oh, man.
his teammates and taking those shots is just next level, dude. Like we've continued to see that he's clutch, but those two shots specifically, the way that he hit them and the time that he hit them, like that's big time, dude. That is like next level clutch ability from a guy who's only what is he,
Yes,
21 years old
bro.
right now, Jude? Yeah, he's got the it factor.
Dude, I texted my group chat of Spurs friends, just all caps, he didn't need the screen. And let me find it. One of our first comments was that Javid Cole, Wemby doesn't need the screen, all caps. I feel like all Spurs fans collectively, when he waved off Harrison, said no, no, and then he drained it. With the way this game went, this will be there's another comment I saw that was good. Yop yop. Bad
Mm,
defense today, but a win is a win. Last season, the Spurs would have lost this one,
absolutely.
and we wouldn't have seen that clutch moment. Not to say that Victor wouldn't have done enough, but just collectively, the team wouldn't have played good enough to even be in that position.
Without a doubt.
I got to mention this one before we leave. Tanner Robinson. Don't worry about it, Devin. I'll kiss it
Mm.
and make it better.
I hope you do, buddy. I hope you do.
Get my man some Advil. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us tonight. If you guys enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below. If you want to stay updated with the channel and all things SSPN, follow us on X or Twitter at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. And before we go, we got a little bit of more fun stuff, Ethan. Let me throw this up on the screen. Look at this
Yes.
beautiful Fiesta court. We are so excited to have the Fiesta back. We got our new Fiesta logo out, Ethan. And I got one more thing to throw up on the screen. It's still got our old logos in this QR code, but check out our merch. We just dropped a bunch of new Fiesta merch. We got the white text. We got the black text for your gray or your black or your white hoodies. We got all the Spurs color schemes with the new SSPN Fiesta gear. So if you guys want to support the channel, go check that out. It's a great way to do so. So again, we truly appreciate you guys.